Fam, welcome back to day 4 in the Golden Ant Castle. Today, as I opened the door to the castle, I felt a sense of unease. Last night, the once peaceful ant castle seemed to have gone through an internal conflict. I found a pile of ant corpses next to the trash heap, and what's even stranger is that every ant was dismembered, its body separated from its head. Can you imagine? Why would ants in the same colony do this to each other? Is this an internal dispute, or is there something else going on? I can't help but wonder what happened behind the scenes. Yesterday, I gave them ham slices, but they didn't even look at it. They completely ignored it. So today, I decided to switch things up and prepared some apples. After all, Formica rufa redwood ants are well known for their sweet tooth, so surely apples would be more appealing, right? I had high hopes this time, thinking they wouldn't ignore the food again. After waiting for a while, I finally saw some ants begin to eat. This time, the apples caught their attention, and Formica rufa started their feeding ritual. It's interesting to note that Formica rufa ants have a unique way of storing food. Unlike other ants, which typically gather food to bring back to the nest, they first eat to their heart's content before turning the food into something that can be shared with others. This feeding method made me think of their social eating behavior. What was even more fascinating was the way they fed each other. Two ants stood up, facing each other, and fed each other by touching mouths. If I hadn't studied their behavior beforehand, I might have thought they were showing affection to me, like some sort of ant couple. In reality, this is just their way of sharing food to ensure that every ant in the colony gets its share. This act of mutual feeding is not just for nourishment but also a key part of their social cooperation. Formica rufa ants usually store small, long-lasting food items in their nests. They don't typically store sugary liquids or perishable food like fruits. Instead, they consume these foods immediately or transform them into something that can be stored for later. This immediate consumption and storage method seems more efficient than other ants' way of bringing food back to the nest. However, it also means we miss out on seeing the scene of ants hauling food home. Their way of working is quieter, more discreet, and incredibly efficient. This made me reflect further. Why do ants have such unique behaviors? The answer is surprisingly simple. Ants are always facing competition in their environment, especially Formica rufa, which are high-efficiency foragers. They don't just forage for food to survive. This made me reflect further. Why do ants have such unique behaviors? The answer is surprisingly simple. Ants are always facing competition in their environment, especially Formica rufa, which are high-efficiency foragers. They don't just forage for food to survive. However, what shocked me the most today wasn't their food-sharing method, it was the conflict among them. I had always believed that ants were a highly cooperative species, but in front of food, they can actually fight each other. I witnessed two ants fighting over a piece of apple. They weren't just gently disputing, but actively struggling. The smaller of the two ants seemed to be at a disadvantage. And before long, it was overpowered by a stronger ant and would likely be disassembled by its colony. The sight of ants fighting among themselves left me with many more questions. Why would ants from the same colony fight? Why does this happen? Ant societies are far more complex than we usually think. Most of the time, ants are incredibly cooperative, but competition for food and resources can cause deep conflict. Particularly when resources become scarce, ants' behavior can drastically change. In these moments, they are forced to fight to secure their survival. The power struggles over food resources, the protection of nests, and the internal distribution of power often lead to conflicts. These struggles for survival are not just external, but internal as well. It's also important to note that ants aren't all equal within their colonies. In every ant group, there is a clear hierarchy. The queen ant is the supreme leader, responsible for reproduction, while worker ants handle foraging, guarding, and taking care of the queen and the larvae. Even within the worker ants, there are differences in role and power. Stronger worker ants typically have more influence over food distribution and are often the ones to dominate in food-related conflicts. Smaller, weaker ants are at a disadvantage and may lose out in these struggles, even being eliminated by stronger members of their own colony. The behavior I observed today, ants fighting over food, made me realize just how complex the ants' social structure truly is. In their world, not everything is harmonious. The relationships between ants are based on hierarchy, strength, and resource allocation. These dynamics are critical in ensuring the survival of the colony. The competition for food is one of the most intense struggles within their society, and it highlights the constant balancing act ants must perform between cooperation and conflict. I kept observing, and I saw another two ants struggling over a piece of apple. Although their strength wasn't evenly matched, the fight went on for quite a while. Eventually, one of the ants was pulled away by a stronger worker, while the weaker one was attacked by its companions. In a matter of moments, the weaker ant was completely disassembled, and the food was claimed by the stronger ones. This raw display of nature's survival rules made me feel a bit cold. Survival in the animal kingdom is often not a peaceful endeavor. In a matter of moments, the weaker ant was completely disassembled, and the food was claimed through today's observation. I gained a deeper understanding of ant societies. Their world is far more complex than I originally thought. In this seemingly simple insect world, there exists a detailed system of behavior, competition, and power dynamics. Every ant's action plays a role in ensuring the survival of the colony, and sometimes that role involves violence and conflict. It's a stark reminder that survival often involves fierce struggles. The stronger ones. This raw display of nature's survival rules made me feel a bit cold. Survival in the animal kingdom is often not a peaceful endeavor. Today, while I saw ants' cooperative behavior in action, I also saw the darker side of their existence. The conflict over food resources, the internal power struggles, these are all part of the ant world. They don't just survive by working together. They also survive by fighting for what they need to stay alive. This understanding of ant behavior has changed the way I look at them. They are intelligent, strategic, and always ready to adapt to their environment, whether that means cooperating or engaging in conflict. As I continue to observe these little creatures in the golden ant castle, I'm more intrigued by the complexity of their society. The survival strategies they employ, the delicate balance between cooperation and conflict, and the way they organize themselves all make me see ants in a new light. There's still so much more to discover in this miniature world, and I look forward to seeing how these ants navigate the challenges of their daily life.